Good Tavach, Shavua Tov, a good new week. Welcome, folks, as we continue preparing for Yud Shvat, the 10th day of the month of Shvat. Tomorrow will be Rosh Chodesh, the new month, starting the first day of the month of Shvat. 10th day, of course, being the day in 1950 that the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, passed away. And on that day, as the sun set, as it were, the sun rose with a new leader, the seventh generation. Seven is cherished, the generation that we're in, and our Rebbe, who continued to share Chassidus. That is something Chassidic, a mimer, as it's called, the Chassidic discourse, is something unique to a Rebbe. Everybody can teach teachings. Everybody can innovate and be innovative, rather, in Torah. And as a matter of fact, we're all obliged to learn and to be great in one's studies to such a degree that you can have innovation in Torah understanding. Of course, we have to be careful with that, that indeed we're not just giving, just what, seems to be make sense to us, but we have to really dig deep in ourselves and in the study to be able to do that innovation. But when it comes to a Hasidic discourse, that is only in the privy in Chabad of a Rebbe. I think I've mentioned this before, but before the Rebbe would say a mimer, it was very discreet. Now, those who were like on a side, they could see on an angle. The Rebbe, under the tablecloth, would take his handkerchief and he would wrap his two hands together under the tablecloth, sort of like binding himself down, because a Hasidic discourse is something that is, a direct, if you will, I don't know, a direct heavenly teachings that are expressed through the Rebbe's, through the mimer, through the discourse. There's a melody that's sung before that, preparation for the discourse, and then delivered. So this is what we're learning. We're learning Basi Lagani, because the previous Rebbe, that's what he left, his final teachings. So the Rebbe, who only considers himself a continuation, an embodiment of his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, continues. He continues with the teachings that are of his predecessor, his father-in-law, his Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, and just feels, a continuation. So in this mimer, Basi Lagani, God says, I'm coming to my garden, not just to my garden, to my bridal chamber. What's a bridal chamber? A bridal chamber is a place where the bride and the groom, after the chuppah, after the getting married under the marriage canopy, they go into this private room that's just of them. It's called the yichud. It's a unity. just as under the chuppah, through the proper through the proper manner of doing the chuppah, two halves of one soul become reunited, the bride and the groom, the chassid and the kala. So further unity is brought to that union under the chuppah through the bridal chamber. Of course, that's a metaphor for us, that God gives us a unity with him. He's the groom, rather. We're the bride. And God gives us an opportunity that we can have a union and a oneness with him in this world. Right. That's unique to Jewish teachings. I always emphasize that because it's very important to appreciate this point, the uniqueness, that the union is specifically here because this is where God wants his Shekhinah, his divine presence, to be. And as we learned, it was originally there in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, with Adam and Eve, but through their sin of the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God was removed, right, from that perfect world that God created, well, almost perfect, right? And of course, as we explained, as a setup, was God was removed, and then through the 6 more generations, God was further removed for to the 7th heaven, and finally, Abraham came, Abraham Avinu, and he brought God from the 7th heaven to the 6th heaven, and finally, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, brings God into this world, firstly by the experience of Mount Sinai, Jewish people, but then he brings God into this world more specifically through creating a home for God, which is the Mishkan, translated as tabernacle, right? A sanctuary for God. And as the verse says, God commands us to make a sanctuary that I will dwell amongst them, not it, amongst them, meaning amongst every single Jew, God will dwell. And as we explained, how do we do that? We do that by creating the sanctuary in us, right? There's a physical sanctuary, of course, and that's what we are waiting for, the third and final holy temple through Mashiach. But then in that preparation to create that, we have to create it in us. What was the Mishkan made out of? Krushim, out of planks. That was the mainstay of it, right? That was the main body of the sanctuary, were the planks. The planks in Hebrew is Keresh, which those letters, Kuf Resh Shin, you just turn them around. Shin Kuf Resh spells sheker, a lie. So we have to take the lie of this world. And what's the lie of this world? Is that I am separate from God. That's the ultimate biggest lie. That's the ultimate biggest lie, that everything is, and hence, because this cup of coffee is separate from God, right? Not that you're not a believer in God, but and of course, God has ultimate control, right? That's how conventional understanding is. But this is separate from God. I'm separate from God. So therefore, I have my own agenda. I have my own whims and desires and so on. Because I'm separate from God. That's the biggest lie. And therefore, that leads us, of course, to lead a life that can be, a good life of trying to do good. but I'm separate from God so that I am, right? I am, therefore I need, therefore I want, and therefore get out of my way. That's where that leads to. So what are we supposed to do from that? We're supposed to take the I am of me, that I am separate entity from God, which is a lie, and to transform that into a plank, a kiddush of the Holy Temple. In other words, that, ultimately, um, I'm really not separate from God. I'm nothing else but a part of God. So this is our what we got to do in our personal lives, in the world around us, and that's how we make it the Shekhinah dwell in this world, the divine presence of God dwell in this world as a result. Now, just recapping because we haven't learned for a while. It's great to be back to learn in the mornings. Um, Now, that's a huge battle from within and from without. Like, like this is so contrary. I mean, except for, we've been learning Chassidus together and Tanya and so on, Tanya, of course, the Bible of Chabad Chassidus. So what we know this notion, but it's really counterintuitive, if you will. It is, you know, yeah, I know I have to be good, but I am. No, here it's about creating a sanctuary for God in me, which means I'm nothing else but a part of Him. And therefore, obviously, I have to do everything I can to align myself with what God wants. So it's a big battle. And this is the idea that we are in God's army, Tzivos Hashem, right? We are, have to do that, as the word God's army also means tzivos. Tzva also means um, time and space. In other words, this battle is down here in this world, right? It's not about a battle. It's not about getting somewhere else. It's not about trying to, do good here so you get the reward in the next world. No, 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 no. It's about the battle down here, about bringing the divine presence in time and space down here. And furthermore, we do that, as the word tzva also means a multicolors that come and coalesce together and that are, inclusive of each other. Not like, sometimes modern art, got one big color and then a splotch over here and a splotch over there. Like, that is, just to get a reaction, you know. No, colors that blend together. They coalesce together, they come together. So in this army, that in time and space over here, that is a battle that we're fighting. We have to be united. You have to be united. So with that, in this battle, so we go to the metaphor of the king. The king, God, right, gives us, he splurges, he squanders everything he has in order to win the battle, right? The metaphor. Now, if the king was only fighting um, to gain more territory, to gain more spoils of war, then it would be limited what the king would invest in it. And therefore, from the treasure house of the king would give a limited amount. But when it comes to fight the war in order to be victorious, right? Oh, victory? There's only but victory. Therefore, the king squanders everything from the treasure house of the kingdom that the king has for a heirloom from generations of things that didn't even see himself, right? Squanders it in order to give it to the foot soldier, ultimately, to fight the battle, because there's only one thing but victory. So this is what God is doing. All he wants is victory of darkness, of light over darkness, over feeling that I am, as opposed to I'm a part of, right? Of um, and in that battle, in that battle, so this is the midah of Netzach, the attribute of victory. And the greater a person is, the stronger the desire of victory, right? The more powerful they are, the more, right? Now, of course, that victory can be in a very negative way, just for, your own self-glorification. We're not talking about that here. But of course, that's the just like the animal, the godly soul has that attribute of netzach, of triumphant, of victory. So does the animal soul, right? So most people that we see that are, powerful and fight, right? It's about them winning and becoming just a bigger self, right? So you have powerful leaders. That's what they are. Complete ego. Now, I don't expect anything different from them, by the way. President of the United States. Don't expect anything different from him because that's what he is, right? He hasn't learned this. Not going to become something more until and even then, it'll be limited. But that being said, um, so when we speak about triumph, so we're talking about in a holy manner, right? In a way that you're in God's army, that you are doing it down here, not for something beyond here, for God in time and space, in a way that you coalesce, are inclusive, and create something beautiful from it. As the word savah means those three meanings. And what the king does, what God is doing, is in order that we should be victorious to transform the world, he's giving from his treasure. That treasure is what we're going to learn more about. What does that mean, his treasure? What's he giving us in order to fight this battle? So more on this to come. More on this to come. What is God giving us so we can fight the darkness of this world, the lie of this world, and overcome